So you've just got this device, you've opened it, plugged it in, you've turned it on. Where is the core vocabulary? All of the high-tech AAC devices come pre-programmed with core vocabulary. Okay? The Pranky-Romic devices come with Unity, which is the picture-based, the Minspeak system. They also come with WordCore, which is a word-based system, and you can buy WordPower. Okay? Now, WordPower is something you're going to see on my list a couple of times because it's a software and it's not a company-specific tool. In a Dynavox, you have Gateway, you have WordPower, and you also have something called AlphaCore, which was developed for individuals who are literate, and so the vocabulary is organized alphabetically rather than by part of speech, because the thinking was that as adults who have lost their ability to speak to communicate verbally, that they might organize their access alphabetically. The Toby's products have a Sono line. The Sono Lexus is the highest level, but you also get core vocabulary in their other versions. And then the Saltillo, it has the NovaChat 10, which is a small core vocabulary set. And some of the other apps out there are also, like ProLoco to Go has put together a core vocabulary app. Okay? Because I think the companies are hearing, the app developers at first were coming out with all this category-based stuff. Like I want to be able to say my animals and my colors and my this. But what was happening is that kids weren't being generative with it. They were saying one word. And so the developers were getting the message that we need to be able to use language. Okay. So now we know where the core vocabulary is in our system. We know that core vocabulary provides the necessary components for language development. And we're going to take a look at a couple of studies really quickly, but first I want to show you. I have to escape out of here for a second. Have you guys ever seen this video? I love this video. I could watch it 10 times a day. I want you to see this little guy and listen to his language.
Tell me what you just said.
I like you when you give me cookies.
You like me when I give you cookies, but you don't like me all the time?
Yeah, no.
Why?
Well, I like you, only love you give cookies for me.
Oh, so only when I give you cookies do you like me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I love you.
I love you too, but I don't like you all the time.
Okay, thanks.
Is that not precious?
How cute.
Okay, what did we hear in his language? We only heard one specific noun in that whole conversation, and he's the little guy. If you parse out his language, there's a 10-word utterance in there. I like you too, but I don't like. I love you too, but I don't like you all the time. It's 10 words. Okay, he couldn't be more than 3, and I question if he's even 3 with those chubby little cheeks. He looks like he's younger. But that's core vocabulary in action. That's core vocabulary in language development. Okay. Did I lose something? No. Okay. Core vocabulary also allows us to focus on pragmatics. How many of us have started with our augmented communicators with I want, right? I want, I need. And then we have, what do you call them, the Holy Grail, the Holy Trinity, Bruce? Eat, drink, and bathroom.
Yeah.
The Holy Trinity. So, and I love food. I'm always so shocked when my client's first priority is not food. Like, what do you mean you don't want to talk about what you're having for dinner tonight? But we get so focused on those basic needs and being able to ask for the things that we want that we forget about the other pragmatic functions, such as directing others, right? Think about your toddlers and your preschoolers. They're not always just asking for things. They're telling you about things. They're commenting, they're negating, they're protesting. Don't want to, right? Asking questions, requesting actions, so push me higher. Okay. Banaji, in her study in Metairie, Louisiana, I'm sorry, I got distracted, collected the vocabulary usage from toddlers. And these are the 26 words that made up 96% of the utterances of these kids. So 3.7% of their language was something different, these 1 to 2-year-old kids, than these words in the daycare environment where their vocabulary is collected. And how many of these words do we usually see on a communication board or in a display? We'll see yes and no, right? Help and finished. We don't typically see here some, right? That needs to be a little bit higher level. Christine Marvin and her crew collected from Lincoln, Nebraska, took language samples of preschoolers. And the focus of the study was to see if the language they used at home was different from the language they used at school. And what they found was that they used the same high-frequency words in both environments. And last night, I had done some editing, and I wanted to let you all see that Benaji's words are all in here. And I highlighted them, but then I think I forgot to save because nothing that I did last night was there this morning. So, but these are 333 words. And when we saw our little guy, his name is Justin actually, who did that cookie dialogue. At first, when I first transcribed it, I said he only used one French word. He used cookie. But look what's on our list. Ooh, cookie is on our list. Okay. The reason I added this next study is because I think we might want to say, yes, if our kids have normal cognition, then we're going to start with core vocabulary and we're going to teach them language. But what about the kids with lower cognitive abilities? We need to give them pre-stored messages. We need to focus on a different area because they're cognitively impaired. I don't know if they can develop language. So I wanted to show you this study, and it was done for individuals who had severe cognitive disabilities and little to no functional speech. And their system initially during the study was all noun-based. I'm going to show you the vocabulary. And then the use of the speech output devices was modified to add a little bit of core vocabulary, and the focus of the core vocabulary was social regulation. So initially, this was what was available in their system. A lot of foods and a couple of leisure activities. And the items that you would need in the kitchen, like a napkin and a glass and things like that. And what they were finding in the study was that individuals who had access to this vocabulary were not using it, and that they needed to be directed to use it. You know, so tell me what you want, and use your device, and use your board. Then they added this social regulatory language and vocabulary in there. And what they found was that once these severe cognitively impaired individuals had access to this vocabulary, that their use of their system spiked, and they went up. I also wanted to just briefly cover the Dolch word list. How many of us have seen these either in our own children or in the school environment where we might work? This is what our kids are learning to read. Before I had the exposure to core vocabulary, I had a kindergartner, and he kept bringing these word lists home. Like, why is can and be on here? Like, these words don't make sense. But after I learned about core vocabulary, I was like, oh, that's why. Because this is what we use for language. And when our kids are learning to read, these are the words that they're learning to read first. Okay. So let's talk about the flexibility of core. That was one of the points that I talked about before, was that it's flexible. So think about the different things that you can say with the word get. You can say, get that, right? Get out of here. I get it. You can get sick, right? So get means to obtain. It means to get out, to leave. It means to understand. It means to become, right? So that's 4 different uses. If I have the word get in my system, I could have 4 different things that I could say with that. Turn it. Turn means turn it on, up, down, over. It's my turn, not your turn. Turn it around, or turn the page. So again, how much can I do with the word turn if I'm introducing that to my individual who's using AAC? The other thing I think that is really important that we talk about is that core vocabulary reduces programming time. How many of you guys spend hours programming vocabulary into your devices, especially in the school environment? Right? You need to come to our session tomorrow morning. We'll show you a better way. By learning to use core vocabulary words flexibly, the amount of programming time that needs to be done decreases significantly. And it's because the vocabulary is already in the device. Okay? Okay, so what I wanted to do really quickly, first of all, let me see if we have time. Yeah, we have a couple Okay, so what I'm going to do quickly is think about in the preschool environment, and you're going to set up a communication board for Play-Doh. Okay. Now, if we weren't focused on core vocabulary, we're focused on the activity itself, what kind of words would we add to our communication board for Play-Doh? We'd probably add Play-Doh, right? Anything else?
Different colors.
Different colors. Okay, so red, blue, green, yellow. Anything else? Roll it, right? So we might have the roller, and the cookie cutter, and the, what else do you do with Play-Doh? Squish, right? I'm going to add smell, because I love the smell of potatoes. Taste it. Taste it. Okay.
Yes.
Say it again.
Give. Like
Give. Okay. And give would be a core word, so that's going to come into our next list too. But also might be, I'm trying to think of some other activity-based words that we would
Make.
make. Okay, good. And make is core. So if we thought about give and make and turn, right?
Please. Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Okay.
Cut. Roll.
Okay. I'm going to add those up here. And then I'm going to add down here do and that. I'm going to add mine, your. Okay. How about one?
Get.
Save that last one.
Get.
Get. Excellent. Good.
What about just you? No. No. And yes.
No. Okay. And how about yes? Okay. So we're playing with Play-Doh. And if we're focused on our vocabulary up here, we could say red Play-Doh. We could say roll green, right? Cut yellow. If we're focused down here, we could say I want that. You do it, right? Not that one. If we're using core vocabulary, we can be using typical language. If you listen to your other kids, I used to say, go into the cafeteria, go listen over at that play center and see what the other kids are saying. They're not saying a lot of nouns. They're saying a lot of core vocabulary. Now, let's say we're finished with Play-Doh and now we want to play with Potato Head, right? Our Play-Doh board doesn't have a lot of utility with our Potato Head activity. But I am going to add some colors because those are more core. But we could take this board, if we had a board like this, our kiddo could take it to the next activity and still say, give me, want that, this one, right? Those kind of core words that didn't make it onto our Play-Doh activity-based list. Otherwise, we'd have to have a page for Potato Head, and we'd have to have a page for dress up, and we'd have to have a page for the kitchen area. But if we're focused on core vocabulary, we can use this core really flexibly in a lot of different ways. Okay. So in the academic environment, one of my sentences turned white, sorry. In the academic environment, core vocabulary can be used rather than spending all your time programming the curriculum vocabulary. And I know from being in a curriculum environment, academic environment, that you can spend hours programming in osmosis and patriotism, okay? Students are able, if you're focused on core vocabulary, they're able to focus on the task of learning the concepts rather than learning where to find the new vocabulary words in their device. So it's social studies class, and we're talking about the Revolutionary War. And so what do? We say, okay, go to your social studies page. Okay, this is Revolutionary War, and this is a Tory, and this is a patriot. And so we're pointing out the vocabulary that we just programmed in that's not going to be useful next week when the theme changes and the unit changes. So if we're using core vocabulary, we're modeling the patriot someone on our side. And a Tory was someone on the other side, right? Okay. And students who participate in the classroom using core vocabulary can demonstrate a greater understanding of the content than if they're just labeling the glossary of terms. okay? And because they're showing a greater level of understanding, they're also, we can see where they're not understanding as well. For example, if the teacher, in the referential teaching method, which is that closed method, teachers ask questions that elicit responses such as names, dates, and places, okay? So teachers can monitor the student comprehension and learning by asking questions such as, name of type of housing that Native Americans use. And we say, teepee. Teepee is not a core word. We have to program it in, okay? And then we also use that format for tests. And I think that in our classrooms, with our kids who are included, we use open-ended questions with our speaking kids. And we use closed-ended questions with our non-speaking kids who use AAC. And I think there's a perception that it's more efficient because it's only one button, right? So the child only has to hit the button and say TP. And I think there's also the issue of the teacher knows that TP's been programmed in, but might not know what other words are in the system that they could use to participate. So it's easier from the educator's perspective for them to just say TP. And the third component, I think, for the reason that we tend to be more referential in the classroom is that we haven't equipped our kids with language. So they don't have the ability to put those words together. In the descriptive teaching method, we emphasize the use of core vocabulary, and it eliminates the need to program this revolving vocabulary of temporary curriculum words. Okay, so the teacher says, what is a TP? And the student can provide a definition to the word saying where they live. Okay, where they live are core words. And if your student is at the one-word utterance, what could they say? They could say home. They could say live, right? And if your student is at a 5 to 6 word utterance level, you're going to expect that they will use that language that they have, and they could say it is where they lived, something that they lived in, right? And those are all core words, and I didn't have to program TP in. But what's more important is I see that my child, my student, understands the concept of TP. So they're not just naming it, but they know that it's where the Native American Indians live, okay? How many of us, when we're in the school environment, want to create those opportunities for our individuals who use AAC to learn language and learn social skills and have time to talk? And you get in the preschool and kindergarten environment, there's all this time to talk. And you get to first grade and second grade, and there is no time to talk, right? There's, other than lunch and recess, everything's structured and ordered, and there's not time for interaction. So what does this descriptive teaching method also give us? But students are learning language all the time. If we're always modeling TP is where they live, Native Americans, people here first, so they're always getting that language model and using the words that they need to use every day. Because when we graduate from high school and somebody says, how are you? You're not going to answer with gladiator. You're going to answer with fine. So they're learning to use their permanent words in flexible and meaningful ways. Bruce and I do a presentation on core vocabulary in the descriptive teaching method, and one of the things that we talk about is how you can do this, you know, all the way through high school. So this is just a middle school lesson. What I do is I went onto the internet and I said middle school science or 8th grade science, and I pulled off a theme. And so the sample vocabulary for a lesson on the solar system would be all the planets, right? And I wanted to show you some very basic descriptions or definitions that you could use. Instead of programming in Mercury, what if we said it's hottest, or first one, right? Venus is the second one, or like Earth, or like us, or like this place, right? Earth, third one, or where we live, okay? So we don't have to program in all of those words. A crater, what is a crater? It's a big opening in the ground. Okay? Ground is not on that 350 to 450 word list of core vocabulary, but we use ground a whole lot more frequently than we use crater. And it actually is programmed in the Unity software. It's programmed in word power. It's one of those words that's in there. Satellite, something that goes around. So you can just get the feel for how you can describe these terms. And I wanted to just show you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but I wanted to also show you that for a child who has more sophisticated language, you can still use a descriptive teaching approach. So the tide is water goes up and down, because the earth pulls on the moon. And again, earth and moon are on that 350 word list, but they're in the high-tech devices. They're in that vocabulary set of gateway and unity and word power. Okay, we're going to skip this for the sake of time. Maybe we don't have to. So, if you're thinking about adults in assisted living environments, you know, adults in group homes, we can take that same approach that we just took with our children who are using, you know, in the preschool, the potato head versus the Play-Doh approach. And if we provide our adults who are using AAC with core vocabulary, they can use that whether they're cooking, or doing the dishes, or making their bed, or doing their laundry. Because if I'm doing the dishes or doing the laundry, I'm putting it in, I'm getting it out, right? Okay. Core vocabulary enables people to be generative. AAC users can say what they want when they want through spontaneous, novel utterance generation. And I love this example. Last summer I had the opportunity to participate in the Isaac AAC camp in Pittsburgh. And I was talking to one of the moms whose child was coming to camp, and she was talking about her son. And her son is a highly involved, physically little boy who uses two-switch scanning in Unity 45. And so it takes a lot of effort for him to be able to generate, you know, language. But he's very generative. And so a friend had come over, a friend of mom's had come over and was talking about this upcoming vacation that she was going to have. And so Augie set himself to generating this message. And again, it took a lot of effort. But his sentence was, "Can you put me in your suitcase?" And he's a little boy. And you think about, can you put me in your suitcase? That was a lot of clicks on Unity 45. But he has the language skills, because if you look at those first 6 words, those are all core words, right? Now, if he only had suitcase in that utterance, we might not have known what he meant. What provided the richness and the context of his intent was the "can you put me in?" Basically, take me with you. But because he had a focus on core vocabulary, and he's got the language skills to be able to do that, he's able to show his personality and participate in conversations. So, when we are faced with an individual, providing an individual with a new AAC device, knowing where to start, again, I said, can be overwhelming. And it's a challenge. Should we start with pre-stored messages or sentences? Should we start with word-based vocabulary? Which words are we going to put in there? And so I'm advocating that we start with core vocabulary, because core vocabulary makes up 80% of what we say. It promotes language development. It's flexible, decreases the amount of programming time you have to spend, especially in the school environment, and it promotes spontaneous novel utterance generation. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to just comment on your use of core vocabulary.
I use it all the time, even when talking about theology. I use it all the time, even when talking about theology.
Okay, so Chris is a licensed minister, as I mentioned before, so even when you're talking about, you know, spiritual matters, you're using core vocabulary, right?
Yes.
Bruce has actually challenged himself at one point to be able to tell the story of Job using core vocabulary. And you can do it. I challenged myself. There's a book called Hatchet, which is one of my kids' favorite books, and I love the book as well. And I thought, you could tell that whole story using core vocabulary. What does that mean? That means that when our kids are doing Hatchet, you'll hear about that if you come to our presentation tomorrow too. If our kids are doing Hatchet, they can participate in the classroom discussions using their core vocabulary, okay? So, These are the references, and they are in the back of your, they are on your handout if you wanted to refer to them. And I wanted to thank you for coming. If you could fill out your evaluation form, that'd be really